I never thought buying a quiet piece of land would turn me into the star of a neighborhood scandal. When I first signed the deed to my place up in northern Vermont, that was the whole point. No neighbors, no noise, no nonsense. Just me, a gravel driveway that sings under the tires, a porch I built with my own two hands, and rows of pear and plum trees that made the property smell like late summer even in spring. For 5 years, it was heaven. Then they came. They called it Maple Hollow Estates, a luxury community that went up like weeds after a rainstorm, cookie-cutter houses, copy-paste lawns, and a homeowners association that thought it had the right to control the sun if they could write it into a bylaw. And at the top of that little empire was their president, Deborah Easton. Picture a woman who could turn a smile into a threat and a clipboard into a weapon. The first time she marched up my drive, she suggested with that tight little smirk that I repaint my shutters to match the community aesthetic. I told her straight I wasn't part of her community. My land predated their development by 30 years, and she could take her pamphlet and file it under no chance. For a while, things were tense but quiet. I kept to myself. They pretended I didn't exist. Until I met her daughter, Hannah. She wasn't like the rest of them, drove a rusty Jeep, had a nose ring, and didn't look like she cared about color-coordinated mailboxes. We started talking about my irrigation system one afternoon, then about architecture, then about books and bourbon. One thing led to another, and before long we were sneaking away on weekends, booking a little hotel an hour out of town just to avoid the HOA gossip machine. 3 days after one of those weekends, I woke to hard knocks on my door at sunrise, not neighborly ones, the kind that make your gut tighten. I threw on jeans, opened the door, and there stood 2 deputies, Deborah in her camel coat, and another board member clutching a clipboard like it was a sword. "Mr. Langford," the taller cop asked. "Yeah, you're under arrest for grand theft agricultural property." I actually laughed. I thought it was a joke. Deborah stepped forward, voice sweet as spoiled honey. "You stole 84 apple trees from our community orchard. Dug them up in the night. Damages exceed $90,000. Who else could it be?" I just stared. Apple trees. Lady, I don't even have apple trees. And do I look like I have a forklift hidden in my barn? The cops weren't laughing. They cuffed me and walked me down my own driveway, while Deborah stood there grinning like she'd just saved the neighborhood from a terrorist threat. At the station, they tried to squeeze me. I told them to check my security cameras, check my yard, check my alibi. I was 2 counties away, drinking bourbon with Hannah. After a few hours, they realized they'd made the dumbest arrest of the year. Cameras showed no truck tracks, no stolen orchard, nothing. They uncuffed me, apologized, even offered me coffee. But the damage was done, word had leaked. By nightfall, the internet had turned me into a meme. Someone photoshopped me as Paul Bunyan carrying 2 trees under my arms. I became the orchard outlaw, trending for all the wrong reasons. That night, I sat on the porch, furious. Deborah had turned her little HOA into a weapon, and she'd used the sheriff's office as her hired muscle. I wasn't about to let that go. I made 3 calls. First to Hannah, who answered already crying. I swear I didn't know what she was planning. "I know," I said, "but she's going to pay for it." Second call was to an old friend, Jeff Coleman, a retired bulldog of a lawyer who once took down a corrupt zoning board in Burlington with nothing but a public hearing and a yellow legal pad. $4 million, he said after I explained everything. Defamation, false arrest, emotional distress. We sue them into the ground. Third call was to my buddy who flies drones for a living. The next morning, we filmed a clean, time-stamped sweep of my land pear trees swaying no apple orchard in sight and posted it online with the caption, "No apples here. Just HOA delusions." It went viral in under an hour. Jeff filed suit within 48 hours. That's when things started to get messy. We uncovered forged documents, a fake horticultural expert whose phone number rang to a deadline in Ohio, and a boundary map that conveniently redrew my property line to include their so-called orchard. County records proved otherwise, and I had the original deed framed in my study to back it up. And then Hannah came through with the smoking gun, months of emails from her mother. At first it was guilt trips, he's using you to hurt me. Then threats, if you stay with him, you're not part of this family anymore. And finally, the line that made my blood boil. If the board pressures him enough, he'll cave. People like him always cave, especially if it starts to affect his little girlfriend. We submitted those emails to the court as new evidence. Suddenly, this wasn't about stolen trees anymore. It was about targeted harassment and a personal vendetta. The media devoured it. Headlines changed overnight. HOA president accused of framing daughter's boyfriend. The neighborhood was buzzing, and Deborah started ducking cameras. The first day of court felt like stepping into a movie set, packed gallery reporters in the back, neighbors filling every seat. Jeff opened like a surgeon, laying out the facts one by one: forged map, fake expert, false arrest. Then came the moment everyone was waiting for: Hannah's testimony. She walked to the stand in a plain black blazer, calm but steady, and read her mother's most damning email out loud. If you don't help us push him out, you're choosing him over your own family. Deborah's face went pale. Her lawyer objected private family matter, but the judge overruled. It went straight to motive, and everyone knew it. Then came the surprise witness, the HOA treasurer, a quiet woman named Mrs. Lowry, who admitted Deborah had ordered her to backdate a compliance letter once to clean up the timeline. You could hear a pin drop. Deborah's jaw, clenched hands, white-knuckled on the table. After 2 more days of testimony, the jury didn't even take long. They found in my favor $3 million in compensatory damages, $750,000 punitive. The court ordered Maple Hollow's leadership restructured and barred Deborah from holding any HOA position for 20 years. When the verdict was read, she just sat there frozen, like someone had cut the strings off a marionette. A month later, the HOA had to sell off part of their land to cover legal fees, including the so-called community orchard. I bought it quietly in cash and planted 84 pear trees in perfect rows. The morning after our wedding, yes, Hannah and I got married in a little white church packed with neighbors who used to pretend I didn't exist. We walked through that orchard together. The air smelled like new earth. We stopped in front of a brass plaque I'd had mounted on a wooden post. It read, "Dedicated to those who know how to lie, but not how to count." These days, Maple Hollow is a different place. The new HOA president is a retired Marine who thinks bylaws should fit on a single page, and once sent me a Christmas card that just said, "Your mailbox is badass." Hannah went back to law, joined a nonprofit that fights HOA abuse, and swears she's never stepping foot in a board meeting unless it's to shut one down. Last week, I got a letter with no return address, just my name written in careful cursive. Inside was a card with a watercolor apple tree on the front. Inside it said, "You may have won, but the neighborhood lost its unity. Hope your pears keep you warm. D." I laughed so hard I scared the dog. Hannah just shook her head and said, "Frame it." And maybe I will. Maybe I'll hang it right on the edge of that orchard so every visitor gets the full story. Because in the end, this wasn't about revenge, not really. It was about surviving someone else's idea of control and planting something better in its place. So tell me, if it were you, would you have fought back or just let them win? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Share this with someone who hates HOA drama as much as I do, and let's talk about what justice really looks like when the neighborhood turns against you.